Hi, thanks a lot for picking up one of our 7 mead tastings. So today, Will and I are going to be talking you through pretty much the range of what we do here at Gosnell, is that right?
Yeah, so we're going to be going through two main styles of mead, I guess, especially two main styles that we do. In the tasting bundle, you're going to get 4 cans of mead and 3 specialty meads.
So the 4 cans are the kind of core range, the ones we kind of make most of. So they're, I guess, a classic hydromel style, which is, I mean, there's thousands of different types of mead.
Even with that, you can go hydromel, session mead, sparkling mead. I think there's even a short mead, which is a term for a short aged or non-aged mead. But yeah.
So there are 4 core meads, and then we've got 3 special things that we've knocked up in the brewery as well.
Yeah, so we do quite a lot of barrel program work here, and we do some high gravity sort of brews as well. So the first one of that will be the pineapple Kavik, which is a roasted pineapple, and Kavik is a traditional Norwegian ale yeast. So that's ferments super tropical, super high. It's got a high tolerance for alcohol. It produces some nice sort of tropical notes, and we just thought we'd put a little bit of roasted pineapple on the top of that and let that ferment out.
Cool.
And then the other 2 are barrel fermented and barrel aged meads. So they're both based on a traditional base. One's got plums and the other one's got mango and Scotch bonnet.
That's really exciting.
So yeah.
So should we open up the pack and
let's see what
we got?
So the first one you'll have is a little sheet, which will have a little descriptor about everything. It'll have where you can find this video, but you've already found it, so well done. On the other side, just a little bit of space just to take some notes, or to sort of write down anything that you liked or disliked, or something you want to just take note of. But we'll probably
let's
jump straight in.
Well, let's open it up, right? So we've got the 4 pack of meads. That's our classic meads. Then we've got the 3 special meads, which come in the little bottles, and then we've got a few other bits and bobs. So we've got some honey. So what's cool about this kit is you get the honey that the meads have been made from.
Yeah, so you'll get 2 honeys. So one honey is the European blossom, which is what we base the cans on. So that's a poly blossom. So a blossom is a flower that produces fruit. So that's a blend of different blossoms, and then we also have a monoflora honey, the orange blossom, which is an orange blossom honey.
And then we've got some other bits and bobs. We've got a bit of info about us and the brand. We've got a seed bomb. So this is our helping out the bees, especially over winter.
So it's not a piece of chocolate, don't eat it.
Don't eat it. So if you plant this in your garden, a load of wildflowers will grow up to kind of...
Yeah, we did that outside the brewery, and over the summer it just went absolutely nuts. It's a beautiful little thing to see.
And a few coasters as well, just to brighten up your desk.
Oh, we might as well use these.
There we go. Right, so where should we start? Should we start with some honey?
I think we should start with some honey. So first off, we'll have a look at the orange blossom, the European blossom, sorry.
So what's really cool about mead and the mead we make is that depending on the different style of honey we use, or different type of honey, and depending on what the bees have been foraging for, you get a different flavour in the honey. And then when you ferment through the sugars, that kind of all gets accentuated, so you can get that bee to bottle flavour.
Yeah,
that's kind of what
and just like if you're new to mead as well, we should probably cover what mead is. So mead, like grapes are to wine, honey is to mead. So it's just where you get your fermentable sugars from. So just like in wine, the honey has a terroir. So depending on where the bees have been foraging, the weather, the soil that's growing, the flora, the different types of flora, you get a beautiful range of, or a beautiful expression of the area it comes from.
So this is a blossom honey, as we mentioned. It's a blend of different types of honey. And so what we do is we like to blend a load of honeys together so we get a consistent flavour. So year after year, depending on, obviously it varies depending on what the bees have been eating, we're trying to get a really consistent flavour so we can make our core meads out of them, and they taste the same each year.
Yeah, so let's have a bit of a go. So this is quite a, I wouldn't say a typical honey, it's still quite a really, really nice honey, but it's a nice sort of rounded sweetness. It's got a little bit of fruitiness to it, a little bit of that genuine honey character as well. It's quite a simple, complex honey, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a good base honey in which we like to layer a load of other flavours on.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you want from this honey, is to be able to have a honey that can stand up to lots of different adjuncts that come in. So if you're going to put a flavour over the top, then this honey is really good because you'll pull different parts out of it. So, you know, if you put, like with the hibiscus, you put it in, you pull that nice honey character, but you also get a little bit of that sort of red fruity sort of character come through as well with it, and a little bit of that's from the honey as well. But then you put the hops in there and you get a little bit more of that apple sort of blossom that comes through in it as well.
Yeah, so that's really cool. And then the next honey we like to use, it's one of our favourite types of honey, is the orange blossom honey. This is actually the honey I used when I first started brewing to make our Gosnell for London, so the original. Now it comes in those big 75cl bottles.
Yeah, so this one is a honey that you'll see a very big difference between the two. This one's got a roundy, little bit more musky sort of feel to it. It's got a higher acidity. There's a little bit of like citrus undertone, and sometimes that can be attributed to your mind, just sort of looking for that. When it says orange on the side, yeah, you're looking for that citrus, but it's there. The acid profile is a little higher, and we like to use that. Well, it's more of a premium honey as well, so we really like to use that when we're trying to showcase the honey. So especially with these traditionals, or God, you call them melomels, or you know, there's lots of names that you can go with that, and these names are usually historically driven as well. So, you know, like these can be called metheglins as well, which is anything that has a spice added to it or a flower. So the hibiscus or the hop would be classified as a metheglin, which comes from the Welsh term for medicine.
There you go, that's a Mead fact for you.
That is, and yeah, a lot of them get their names from these sort of historical things, like a rhodomel is Greek for...
rose.
Yeah, it's like
rose hips, or...
No, it's rose honey?
Oh, I don't know. Well,
yeah, I'll remember that in a minute.
Yeah, fair enough.
But,
so I think what's really cool about these two honeys, you can see the difference between them. So one of them, I like to describe as quite, so the orange blossom honey is quite a distinct kind of sharp flavour almost, and the other one's a bit more rounded. So you can kind of see how we're going to use that as we make our meads. So now's probably a good time, if you're not set up, get yourself a glass, make sure your meads are all chilled and you're ready to go.
Yeah, so remember, chill these ones. These ones you can serve at room temperature as well. Or you can serve them slightly chilled. I probably wouldn't put them in the freezer and have them super cold.
Yeah, you want them to
just a little bit to open up, and because they're oxidised as well during that fermentation process, because they're barrel fermented, you know, having them open and get a bit of oxygen just help lift up that flavour profile as well.
Sure. So, should we get into it?
Let's get into it. So I think we'll start with the hopped.
Yeah, I normally start with the hopped.
Yeah, the hopped is one that's a little bit more accessible to people in understanding what the flavour profile is going to be. If you've drank beer, you know what hops are like, and you know what the sort of flavour profile they give, a little bit of bitterness, a nice little bit of aromatic as well. So yeah, these ones are done with US Cascade hops.
Right, so quite big hops.
Quite big hops, you know, not super tropical, but a little bit tropical. Oh, that's what the coasters are good for, because when you spill, you don't move it all around.
Well, try not to anyway.
But so the first thing you're going to sort of see is that beautiful colour. So we're looking at that first honey here, the European blossom, which is quite dark and yellow, and you're going to see just a little bit of that stick in the final product.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit of head retention as well. Unlike beer, we don't have as much proteins in our mead as well, so we don't get as good head retention. So when you see that head drop, it's not flat, it's just how that sort of product settles out.
Sure, it's worth saying that the cans are obviously all carbonated, so it kind of helps to lift some of the flavours. They're 4%, so they're quite sessionable and quite easygoing. And that carbonation just adds to the mouthfeel, and the CO2 is actually a little bit acidic, so it kind of sharpens up some of the flavours.
Yeah. So the other thing too is, you know, I get it all the time. What do you shake your glass, or what do you roll it around? Sometimes you do it because you're adding a little bit of oxygen into it, or you're knocking out a little bit of that CO2 so you can lift some of those more volatile compounds up into
the aromatics kind of,
and you can get those into your nose.
So what does it taste like, or smell like on the nose as well?
So on the nose, the first thing I always get with our stuff, it's honey. So you're going to get honey at the forefront, and that's kind of the idea. But just behind that, those sort of secondary flavours start to kick in. There's a little bit of apple, I get a little bit of elderflower.
Yeah, I definitely get the elderflower coming through. And that's the kind of one of the flavours that people often mention, is that elderflower.
Yeah, and it's again, talking about it being hops, it's something that you've smelled before and you understand, and if you're doing these sort of tastings quite often, you get a little bit deeper, and when you start getting a bit deeper into this, you get a little slight citrus note. There's a little bit of There's a little bit of almost like grassiness in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's have a taste. Cheers.
Oh, I always forget how good that is. So, on the palate for me, it's, you obviously get that hit of kind of not sweetness, but like you definitely know there's some honey character coming through.
Yeah. So for me, the first part of palate is adjusting to that sweetness level.
Yeah.
And that's why it's always good to start with the hops because of the hops as well, you get a little bit of bitterness. So that kind of helps towards the end of the palate as it's also start to bitter out and get that little bit of tannin structure, a little bit of astringency at the end. That middle palate, the acid seems to come through and just sort of lighten it up as well. And you get a nice sort of floral and sort of, I'd say grassy again.
Yeah, and elderflowery kind of notes.
Yeah, these sort of
floral notes. Yeah,
and they sort of come through all the way through that palate, and then you get a nice sort of drying finish with the hops.
Yeah, it's a nice kind of short, sharp finish. I think
Yeah.
it's nice and crisp and refreshing.
And you'll see that when we start comparing these cans together, even though they've got a very similar base, they really do differ past the first part of the palate.
Yeah.
Some of them, like the Citra, which we'll get to, a little bit salty at the front as well, but it's more salty at the finish.
Yeah.
But yeah, so enjoy, guys. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, obviously feel free to give us a pause whilst you enjoy this. Don't expect you to ramp through
Yeah, that's it.
7 meads.
When you look at the video and you go, I've got to drink 7 meads in 25 minutes, you can. If you want to record that and send it to us, that's always fun. We do love a very intense short drinking session. So yeah, efficient. Yeah, that's it.
So I normally go on to the Citra.
Yeah.
So these were actually formulated at the same time. So when we were looking to make the hops, this was a much more experimental recipe. Kind of, I think the inspiration from Nick, who made it, your predecessor, was a goza. So kind of. Yeah, taking inspiration from that. So
a goze, if you don't know, a goze is a sour beer, so a lactose sour beer with coriander, lemon peel, and hops.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're going with here, except we've transferred the coriander for tarragon. So we've sort of brightened it up, and the tarragon gives you a little bit of anise, not over the top. As somebody who's quite sensitive to that sort of anise flavour profile, it's very well incorporated. And then the saltiness just gives it a nice, clean
sea salt
finish.
in it.
Yeah,
forgot that.
We did. So at the end, we got a little bit of sea salt. So the story when I started here that I really enjoyed was that Tom used to drive down to Cornwall, fill up an IBC full of seawater, bring it back.
It wasn't an IBC, it was a big jerry can, because the Clio can only take. Only take 50
I've seen that
seawater.
Clio take a lot. It's a
know.
beautiful car if you're looking for an old car, buy a Clio.
Yeah, no, Anyway, so it was originally with seawater. Obviously, we scaled up the recipe, so we replaced it with sea salt. And we make
a little bit more consistency as well. And as you sort of start to like a recipe, you're always developing and you never quite finish.
Yeah. Thanks, Will.
More than welcome.
So I think this is the most complex of the cans in terms of the flavour. There's a lot of flavours layered on top of each other, and actually that's quite challenging to do well, to kind of get each of those elements to sing both together and individually.
Yeah, so when I talk about this with people, I remember when I first started brewing that I was told that not to use any more than 3 ingredients, stick to quite simple flavors, otherwise you don't know what's going to happen at the end.
Yeah.
And that's good for developing recipes, but once you've developed a recipe and then you start moving it along, you can really start getting used to it, and this is where this is at. So when you put your nose into it, Tom, what do you get?
Oh, it's richer than the first one. So and that I can get the tarragon coming through. I obviously know it's tarragon. It's not that familiar a smell or a flavour, but that for me is the predominant. A little bit grassy, a little bit anise, creamy almost. Like there's a richness to it.
And you can really smell the salt too. And I always have this sort of can you smell salt? And I'm like, well, you can smell the ocean, you can smell salt.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's got a little bit of that sort of character to it as well. We also use lemon peel in here as well, just to give it a little bit of citrus,
something to bite into.
Yeah, something to lighten it up with the acid profile.
This is definitely one of the ones that you want to have a couple of sips. It will open up. It's, as we said, it was quite complex, so you need to sort of bend your mind around it a little bit.
Yeah, especially after the hopped.
Yeah.
The hopped had a nice dry finish. This one, you're really picking up a little bit more of the sweetness. You can really get that I think it's a lemon peel that's giving it that sort of roundy creaminess to it as well. So just because we use not just the peel, we use a little bit of the pith as well.
Yeah, so you get some of those oils coming out.
You get some of those oils, and it gives it a nice rounded sort of feel to it as well. You get a nice little bit of hop character in there as well.
Yeah.
It helps dry out at the end, but then you can get hit with that beautiful salty finish at the end.
I know, that for me, that's what makes this exceptional, right? It's that salty, almost like, it's not like salted caramel, but in the same way that you use salt and salted caramel.
Yeah,
so
salt and sweet go together so well, you know.
Exactly.
But yeah, cheers.
That's tasting really good today. I kind of oscillate between which is my favourite, but sometimes you just taste it and go, oh, that's
That's the beauty about the 4-pack, is that there's definitely one in there for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So guys, this is probably another good time. Pause your video, finish off your drink, enjoy it, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, and if you've got any thoughts or questions, then either send us an Instagram or an email. Yeah, we'd love to hear what people think about what we're doing.
We really do. It's the best sort of way to get feedback.
It does make my day when people send us an email. I had a lovely phone call from someone the other day.
Nice.
It's just really nice.
Well, this is it. When you actually give your number out to people and they use it, it's quite surprising.
Exactly.
You know? And it's usually you always think you're going to be scared of people just annoying you with stuff, but we only get great things come through.
Yeah,
so.
which is nice.
All right.
Well, hopefully you've had a little bit of a pause. Where you carry on? Where are we going next, Will?
So I think the next one that I usually like to go to is the sour. So let's crack open the sour.
Cool. So tell us about the sour, Will.
So-
How's this made and how's this different?
So the sour is my baby. This is a mixed fermentation mead. So mixed fermentation just means that it's using different yeast and bacteria. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is sour when you say mixed fermentation, but generally it is. So with this one we're using Saccharomyces, which is your normal brewers or baking yeast. Then we're using Lactobacillus, which is what you'll find in yogurt and used to cure cheese. And then we also use Acetobacter, which you'll find in vinegar and in Belgian beers, which is where I sort of got the inspiration for this growing up. I loved Belgian beer. It was something so strange to me, that combination of acid profiles and the sourness that goes to it always struck me as something I always wanted to create.
Yeah, and I guess what's really cool is those three organisms form this kind of symbiotic relationship where they're kind of producing different compounds that they all kind of eat together. And it's really unique mixed fermentation.
Yeah, so the fun side of that too is that Acetobacter converts alcohol into acetic acid. So you've got a different style of fermentation happening there as well. So that means you need to produce the alcohol using the Saccharomyces and that converts sugar to alcohol, and then you've got the Lactobacillus, which will convert sugar to lactic acid, and then you've got the Acetobacter that takes some of that alcohol and converts that over to acetic
so
acid.
what we do is we obviously essentially sour up the mead, don't we? So we make quite a sour base and we back it off with a sweeter mead, which is technically they use in Belgian beers as well.
Yeah, and this is what you'll find about this is it's a balance between sour and sweet. So it's not like your typical sour beer, which can be quite acidic and dry. This has got a nice balanced sweetness to it that really makes it unique.
Yeah, cool.
So let's have a go.
Oh, so on the nose you definitely get that acid profile, right?
Yeah, so you get a little bit of that sort of vinaigrette, that nice rounded sweet smell of the lacto as well. And you get nice yeast characters. We also use a little bit of tea in this as well, and that's just to give a little bit of nitrogen to our mixed fermentation. So with that there, you're going to get a little bit of this tannin structure and a little bit of roundness coming from the tea as well. Other than that, it's pretty much a straight mead. So you're looking at just how that bacteria works with the honey, which is really cool.
And then on the flavour, you get this. It's a little bit funky. Is not necessarily. It's not super funky. There's a hint of funk in there. And then there's the acid, which is nicely foiled with the sweetness, and then for me it just gets you salivating at the back of the mouth.
Yeah, and the tea allows it just to give that little bit of maltiness, that little bit of biscuit that you can kind of get in there, or bread some people associate it with, and that just gives it a nice full round feel to it as well, which is really, really cool.
It's really cool.
But this is definitely, we talked about it before about having our favourites. This one's always my first or my second favourite. It takes a very long time to make. Probably about 3 or 4 times as long as all the other cans, but
there we go. It's worth it. It's worth it. So guys, again, let us know what you think about that, and take a pause, take a breather if you like, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, enjoy.
Where are we going next then, Will?
Okay.
Oh, well, go for the last can, the hibiscus, which is my personal favourite, the one that I like to drink in the shower.
Please tell me more. I haven't heard this story.
The world's split about shower beers.
Well, in Australia, it's always been a thing. It's not even a question of, oh, that's weird. It's just you're either a person who does it or you don't.
Yeah, so I'm a person who likes a really cold beverage in the shower. And this is my go-to beverage, especially at the moment. So it's the Hibiscus Meat, beautifully pink.
As you can see, yeah, and this one talking a little bit more about not having proteins in our mead as well. The hibiscus itself actually gives a little bit of protein structure to this as well. That's why you get a little bit better head retention with the hibiscus versus the other 3 cans.
So this is made by essentially jamming the fermenter full of hibiscus flowers, so dried hibiscus flowers.
Which, if you've ever had dried hibiscus flowers, they're very tart, they're beautiful and fruity, and they're just a really cool thing to work with. And when we put our nose into it, we'll see all these fruits and these red fruit sort of flavours that come through, but there's nothing there but hibiscus, which is why I really love working with this this ingredient.
Yeah, so on the nose I get blackcurrant, jam,
very
fruity,
jammy.
very jammy.
Yeah, I get a little bit of, little tiny bit of cranberry and a little bit of raspberry, these sort of like berry characteristics.
Fruits, yeah.
These red fruits. Not so much red stone fruit, but more berry-esque.
It's a red stone fruit.
Would you call plum a red stone
I
fruit?
suppose you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah. It's red on the outside,
It's
but
red on the
it's usually
outside.
got white flesh.
Anyway.
Oh, can you get...
We
Conversation
digress.
for another time.
Yeah.
This is the beauty about drinking mead, is as you get further on, the conversation gets a little...
more fluid. So this is just gorgeous, right?
So on the palate, you really got to notice the level of sweetness drop, and that's not necessarily less sugar than the others or less residual honey than the others. It's more that acid profile from the hibiscus is really lifting that drink to be, perception of sweetness to drop.
Yeah, and I think what the hibiscus, there must be some tannic structure in this hibiscus flower.
Yeah.
Because you get that dryness at the end, which I always compare to, say, cranberry juice.
Yeah.
So that drying out, it's not dry, it's sweet, but then you get that dry finish, which is nice.
And it's really fun to sort of go through that, especially when you compare all the cans and how different they are based on their ingredients. This one's one of those ones where you're just like, wow, that's so diversely different to the rest, and it's only one ingredient.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah, cool.
So
really
guys,
fun.
take another breather if you need it, and then we'll continue on with some of the small batch. What are you doing here?
I heard you guys are tasting some mead, so I wanted to join the party.
We will be.
We will be. We've just finished tasting the 4 packs of mead, so hopefully you've enjoyed that. This is a bit of a segue into the second half, which is our more premium mead tastings.
Yeah, so we change them each month, and this is the next instalment. So make sure your glasses are clean, ready to go, and enjoy.
And as if by magic, James disappeared. We've both changed clothes.
I think we can do that more often.
I know, exactly. So we are going to be doing the second half of the tasting. What have we got this month, Will?
So this month we've got a little bit of a eclectic collection where we've got some straight meads, we've got some we've got a boucher, we've got a traditional, and we've got a capsamel.
All right. So yeah, lots of exciting things. So where do you reckon we should start?
So I probably suggest we start with the Hackney.
Cool. So this is a straight mead. So yes, we start with the straight mead. Then what do you reckon after that?
After that, I think we might even just go straight to another straight mead with a different yeast.
Yeah. So the Kavik.
We'll go to the Kavik second,
and then the coffee boucher, and then the finish on the chili mead, which is the capsamel. Yeah.
Which is the only one out of this that's dry as well. So we'll grab some water between then. But let's get into the first one.
Guys, as always, you feel free to pause the video as you go through if you want to take a breather, or just split us up into sections. There we go. So what are we starting with, the Hackney?
So the Hackney is part of our Mead the Month program a little while ago. We kept a little bit aside to be able to sort of punch out in our can format and get people sort of an easier access to that program. So the idea of that was to use either monofloral, single origin, or single beekeeper honey, and create a series of meads that showcases the honey and just the general variety and differences that honey can have.
That's cool. So this is obviously made with honey from Hackney. Well, let's get into it. So for those of you who don't know, Hackney, East London.
Yeah.
Pretty urban.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of marshland down there.
Exactly.
There's a little good variety of flora for the bees to feed on.
So this is done with our house yeast and our house method. In this program, this is the highest ABV we've ever pushed our house yeast.
Well, that
So-
is nice, isn't it?
When we get into it, we'll start with the nose and we'll work our way through and
Yeah,
see what
sorry,
we get.
you were looking for more than that's nice. Otherwise, you could have just done it yourself.
That's fine. So the first thing on the nose for me is honey, and then it's this apple, melon, and pear mix on the Hackney.
Yeah, so I get some apple. I get a bit of grassiness or a bit of vegetation, those kind of
Yeah,
things.
that sort of
Green
yeah.
is my colour.
And yeah, for me, green for me it's a little bit more dark green. It's a little bit more hedgerowy and you know,
Yeah, I can see
bog
it.
myrtle, if you will.
Bog myrtle, there
That's
you go.
fine.
Or meadowsweet, it's also called.
Yeah, different names, different things, Tom. So, cheers, guys. Let's get into the palate.
So that's good. So what I mean, obviously, I get a bit of a hit of the sweetness. Quite a rich, full mouthfeel.
Yeah, comparing
It's
to the
quite
cans
rounded.
like you've just had, this is a little bit thicker, a little bit more viscous, and it's also just packs a little bit more warmth.
Yeah.
And but pushing up that ABV to about 9%, you're going to get some of that alcohol come in.
Yeah, and I can definitely feel that it's more warming. I mean, it's not.
It's also been
stringent, but it's.
It's
you know,
been
just
aging
that-
as well, which sort of helps
Mellow out, I
mellow
guess.
out those
Yeah.
high alcohols and bring them a little rounder. So you get the warmth, but you don't get the burn,
Mm.
which is which is what you want in your drink, I
Yeah,
suppose.
exactly. Yeah.
But on the palate it's got that nice stickiness of honey. There's a little bit of like almost like a cider characteristic with this apple sort of flavour that comes in, and then you
Also,
start.
kind of a little bit of creaminess in the mid.
Yeah, some people say to them it's a little bit yogurty. It's this. It's
Yeah,
hard
just-
to pin down.
I think
exactly.
it's richness is how I describe it. You know, and then you look for things that are rich, right? Okay. Yeah, that is.
But as it starts to go through, there's a nice little bit of funk in there as well. And we're using raw, unrefined honey, and you start to get a little bit of that. Like there's a little bit of this funky sort of fermentive flavour profile that's there that makes this super interesting and
Yeah.
surprisingly sessionable for 9%.
Yeah,
as you can see.
you can see, I've just destroyed mine. No, it is. That one will sneak up on you.
And will indeed, but 330ml can. We used to do
Yeah.
that in the 750ml bottles, and I would not struggle to put one of those
No,
away.
no, it's true. I was about to go off topic. Let's keep it on topic. Next, we're moving on to this. You call it a Nordic Ale Yeast. It's Kaviking.
Yeah, so it's actually a Nordic blend
Oh, okay.
of. So Kavik is a Norwegian farmhouse strain of yeast. Well, multiple strains of yeast. So you got to sort of give thanks when it's there. And these strains of yeast are not just made in a lab, and these are strains of yeast cultivated from people who have been keeping these cultures alive over generations and generations.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about the old stave hanging over in the.
Well, you used to have this. So to be able to,
So I'm just prompting you.
Yeah.
So I don't, because otherwise I'll just tell the story.
You have to dry yeast like you would get for baker's yeast making bread, and that drying process is something that we've been doing for eons. And the way that the Kavik sort of style was done was they would have a branch or a wreath made up of branches that, as they would make their wort or their start of their beer before it starts to ferment, they would dip that in and it'd be covered in wild yeast and bacteria. And as they dipped it in, that wild yeast would go into the sugar solution and start to ferment. And then you'd pull that up and you would hang it up in your house again. And when you were ready to brew, you would take it down and dunk it in the bucket and the magic would start. So
But the really cool thing about Kavik is that it ferments really hot, right? So
Yeah,
it's a much hotter fermentation temperature than any other yeast.
it ferments hot, it ferments fast, it ferments clean. It's really, really cool. It gives these tropical notes. There's a little bit of high alcohol in there as well. And it's just a really well-balanced yeast profile.
Right, should we have a smell and a taste?
Let's get into it. So the first thing I know is, if you've had a lot of Kavik style stuff, there is a little uniform smell that they all have together, and that's that. It's almost like warm, tropical / boiled lemon lollies.
Yeah, it is, exactly. That's a really good descriptor. Sorry, of the lemon lollies is like...
Yeah, it's just got this, almost you could say candied lemon peel in there as well, depending on what you've had and you associate with. But let's move into the palate.
So this for me is a bit sweeter and a bit sharper than the Hackney, right? So,
Yeah, it's got a little bit higher acid profile. It's got around about the same sweetness, but because the acid profile is lifted up,
what's the ABV on this? 8. Okay.
8%. Yeah, so it's a little bit lower ABV, but about the same amount of residual sugar.
Yeah, sure. And is this the orange blossom honey you used?
So this is a polyblossom honey.
Polyblossom.
So this is the European blossom.
It's a lot rounder in terms of flavour than the Hackney,
Yeah.
which is the Hackney's that hedgerow. This for me feels fruitier.
Yeah, and a lot of that flavour profile is coming from the yeast. So when we use a
ester
raw,
production,
yeah, and like when we use a raw honey like we did in the Hackney, you want to sort of showcase that honey. When you are doing another style that you want to, let's say, promote an adjunct like a fruit or a herb, or if you want to, profile the yeast, then it's good to have a nice base honey that doesn't have a huge amount of character and allow that yeast to create the character for itself, and that's what we've done here.
Awesome. I mean, this for me is 8%. You wouldn't notice, right? It's fermented so clean and so yeah.
And this is why we love this yeast, because we've done quite a few. You can push this right up to 10, 11, 12%. But realistically, well, this strain actually ferments between 5 and 10%, which is quite a varying ABV range for a yeast, but it is almost like a wild yeast, so it's kind of up to the temperature control and how much you look after it, how much it produces. So we find that this 8% is a really good spot for it to showcase the honey, showcase the yeast, and just make an all-round sort of melded profile.
Nice. So we're going to move on. The penultimate one on the tasting kit is the coffee boucher.
Yeah, so guys, of course,
yeah.
if you haven't paused before, pause now, and
Pause for
let's
thought.
get into it.
Yeah, we're going to crack on because every day's a work day.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
So the first thing,
it's a hard life, isn't it?
It's very difficult, Tom. We really, I had this.
See,
discussion
we've also got smaller smaller pours as we go through because I learned from your pour in the first one.
Yes, sorry, that's just
right.
me. I don't want to waste any of the Hackney, so.
Right.
But there's always James,
There's
and
always
he's
James,
waiting behind the camera for all the half-drunk cans. So.
It's true.
we
So
can
tell
look
us more
after it.
about this as well.
So this is a boucher. So a boucher is a type of mead where you caramelize either all or part of the honey. So what you're doing is you're raising the temperature of the honey. Has to be above sort of 50, 60 degrees. And then you allow those sort of caramel roast notes to start to go in. It's not so much the Maillard reaction, though there is of course some happening, but we don't have a lot of amino acids in our mead to be able to get the Maillard reaction. That's why it's more caramelization than Maillard.
Sure.
But so we do that.
You're caramelising the sugars, right? Like you do when
Yeah.
you're making caramel.
Yeah.
Or toffee.
Yeah,
or
any of those sort of things.
fudge.
Any others?
There's a no.
Do you have to do that with marzipan?
No, marzipan's almond, isn't it?
Yeah, do you still caramelize?
No, you don't.
Cool, so I'm going to back down from
Yeah.
that and move back to what I know, which is the coffee boucher. So we first we barrel fermented this. So we take the honey outside in a big pot under a naked flame, and we take samples every 5 minutes and watch that caramelization process happen. Then we mix it 50-50 with uncaramelized honey because we find that gives us the best of both worlds. And then we ferment that in a barrel, and then we let it barrel age for about 6 to 9 months depending. And with this one here, about 9 months on this one, and then we put it into secondary and we dry beaned it with some Brazilian coffee that we got from a local roastery just a couple doors down from us.
Okay, so then on the nose, that's where I'm getting the coffee from, obviously.
When you even do, the reason we use the boucher as the base for the coffee mead that we wanted to create was that it already has these coffee, caramel, roasted notes, and it really melds well when
it's a bit chocolatey, bit coffee-like, and there's that hint of bitterness from the caramel or from something that's sort of bubbling away in the background.
And when you caramelise something, that's what you get is a nice little bitterness round, and that's why we like to split it 50-50 with it, just so the bitterness isn't at the forefront, it's just nicely balanced in the profile.
And then on the palate, I'm getting those things coming through. I'm getting the honey, getting the coffee.
You can even get a little bit of that almondy sort of walnutty sherry-esque quality from the barrel fermentation and the barrel aging as well with that micro-oxidization. It gives a nice little complex back. Then there's a nice sweetness in there to help all that homogenize and come together. And then the coffee is on the nose bang and on the palate bang. And that's what we kind of really wanted from this, was not to have the coffee hiding in the back. It's coffee boucher. We want the coffee to be out the front.
Yeah,
the boucher
and you definitely get that coming through.
But this one is
It's been a nice one for after dinner, I think. Like,
yeah, or like every now
or
and
in the
again.
morning. No, sorry.
It's I would use it the same way as I use a like an espresso martini if I'm out and I want something just a little
pep you up a
punch
bit.
of sugar and
Yeah.
something just to lift me up and
Maybe we do need to make a fuck fast mead. But anyway, that's a separate idea.
so it's a different tasting video.
Tasting video.
But
Awesome. That's really fun. I'm really glad. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. As again, this feels like one of the things that I was pushing as an idea. That had nothing to do with the creation of it, but I'm really pleased with how you've done that.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time refining our boucher recipe. It's one of our sort of more premium things that we actually do constantly do. Everybody really likes our boucher, and of course, as we do, we always experiment with things that we make. So, we took off a couple of demijohns of our boucher before, and we tried it with banana and coffee and. Yeah, and then we ended up putting it into our small batch program, which is where this come from. I don't know if we mentioned it before, but we do a small batch program, and we put these sort of things we've played around with, and we put them into can.
Awesome. So the final one we're going to move on to is this is more of just an experimental batch from the brewery, isn't it? Mango and Scotch bonnet.
Yeah, so we got some new bourbon barrels in, and what we wanted to do was create a dried traditional inside a fresh bourbon cask. So these flavors are very, very intense and spiky, and when you're doing your first batch in a barrel, you really want to pull some of those tertiary or primary flavors out and add some more complexity to it and allow that barrel to sort of get into the mead world.
Yeah.
When it's coming from whiskey or if it's coming from wine, it imparts a lot of flavor, and sometimes you don't want a ton. So what we did in this was we're going to get tons of bourbon. Let's play with something in there that's going to work with that. So.
Oh yeah.
So the first thing we should go through is this is what's called a capsamel. So that's a mead made with capsicum,
Peppers.
peppers.
The hot peppers? I think it has to be. Yeah. Well,
Yeah. It's up for debate, right?
But yeah, so
It's,
chilies essentially.
So we did this with a wine yeast. We barrel fermented it inside, and then when the fermentation had finished, we got this beautiful bourbony, white wine-esque, and this woody, and these sort of like really big, bold flavors. So what we wanted to do was put a couple of flavors over the top that were just gonna make all that work together, and we went with mango, which is when you use mango in a drink, it gives you this big mouthfeel, almost like plantain and banana do. They're very good at creating a mouthfeel. And then we wanted to add just a little bit of something that's just going to brighten it up, and that was the chili. So we put in 6 or 7 Scotch bonnets, which is actually quite a fruity. But
we were having a debate about this earlier about how spicy they are, and I said they were medium spicy. Apparently, they're very spicy.
Yeah.
But they do, what's important, they have the fruit behind the
That's
the
it, and
spice.
there's a balance.
There's a flavour behind them. It's not just spice or heat. There is also this fruity.
And when we made this, the reason we chose Scotch bonnet and mango is that they're quite readily available. In season on Rye Lane.
Yeah, I mean we love just walking down Rye Lane and seeing what's in season.
Picking it up and seeing what we can make with it. So the first thing you're going to get in the nose is this.
Well, saying not in season in Peckham, but
Yeah.
I don't think there's many.
There's not too many native Peckham fruits. I think maybe us.
Well, apples and pears, but yeah. Anyway, so on the nose, I'm getting a hint of that spice. I'm getting that fruitiness, particularly from the chili, comes through on the nose, and then a hint of the mango in the background.
Yeah, and for me, there's this really cool earthy quality to it as well. This mushroomy sort of like pith sort of character that comes through on the nose, which is from the primary fermentation itself, which is really cool. So it's that interaction with the wood that's giving you this nice sort of earthy quality.
Oh, that's good, isn't it?
So this is bone dry, but the acid and the chili, and that's one of the things that we want to do, dry and chili together, because if you've eaten any sort of spicy food, usually it comes with an acid base to help regulate, either acid or sweet, to deal with that heat. And the acid profile in this allows that chili to be there, but it cleans up with the acid as it works its way through your profile, so through your palate. So it doesn't leave you with this big chili sort of burn down the back of your throat. It actually kind of cleans itself up.
That's delicious. Well, guys, that's kind of
brief history of all these products and your tasting. So yeah, let us know what you think. We're always keen to get some feedback. So if you've had a favourite, and then get us on.
We do
online.
these each month as
Yeah,
well.
we do
So
each
this
month.
feedback allows us
exactly.
to sort
We're
of
going to
see.
try and change this up each month, which would be cool.
But guys, thank you so much for.
Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, we'll see you again next month.
Take care.
Well, hopefully you've enjoyed that tour, whistle-stop tour, not so whistle-stop tour, through our meads. If you have any questions or you want to let us know what your favourite was, tag us in your photos. Everyone loves a bit of social.
Yeah.
And get in touch.
So guys, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.